7 o'clock will commence at 7:05 per the agenda. Allow people to join.
Yeah, I'm still sending out emails. We have 39 people.
And that's not even including outside of the Eventbrite.
That's good.
So yeah, that's a good number.
Yeah,
Nice
that's a really good number.
Yeah.
I mean, what else are people going to do? They should be joining. Get on top of it.
Exactly. I should have grabbed a glass of wine, but drinking coffee. So.
Oh, me too.
I'm a loser today.
Oh, you're not a loser.
Just a little.
Hello.
Is that Zach?
Hi, is that Zach?
Yeah. Hi, Zach.
Hey, Zach.
There we go. Hi. Hi, Nineveh.
Hello. Long time. How have you been, Zach?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
I might be able to get you to see my sweatshirt adorned body here. I'm sorry. I'm very informal. My camera
me
might
too.
work
Don't
better,
worry.
Okay, we're all, you know.
It's like that.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. Hey.
Yes, with tons of backlighting.
I gotta undo my mute.
I like it. Is that Chris?
It is.
Chris is on. Chris is one of my, I work with Chris.
Yep. You sent me the invitation, right?
I did. So glad you can make it. Thank you for coming. Yeah, we're just letting people join the next few minutes.
Okay.
See, the list is growing.
So
Oh,
this is an actual presentation and not just a happy hour?
It's both.
It is kind of like both. Yeah, it is. I see.
Man, I didn't bring my drink.
Yeah, I didn't bring mine either.
Yeah, I'm just, coffee.
Wow, you're dedicated.
Yeah, I'm fancy.
It's 7 o'clock. It's definitely time for something different than coffee, okay?
I'm with you, Quintin. I'm with you, but it's not happening today. Wine is just gonna make me sleepy.
Well,
at least right now it will. But I promise next time. I did
Maybe
buy a
after.
couple bottles earlier today.
I have been hosting Zoom happy hours though, so I'm gonna have to invite you.
Perfect. Yeah.
We did a Zoom birthday party for my 4-year-old a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that is so cool. Happy birthday.
It was loud and energetic.
I see Brittany joined. Yay! Hey, Brittany.
Hi, Nineveh. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Background. Long time.
This was from Jamaica, from the trip. Yep.
Yeah. You probably know Emily and Zach, right, Brittany? You've been, Brittany is all over just all the social circles.
Since I've moved, I've slowed down a little bit. When I get back in the swing of things, I'm sure I'll be out and about.
Yeah. I would say slowed down is an understatement.
That is making me miss Jamaica. I was in Jamaica in January, right before all of this COVID stuff happened.
Yeah, this is March. So this is when it happened. Like the day, the first day they got their first case.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
It's a beautiful experience. I have all of those memories in my head right now.
Quintin and Nineveh, I want to say hi. It's Melissa.
Melissa, hello.
I'm going to mute myself in a second, but I just wanted to say hello.
Long time no see.
I know. I miss everybody.
Oh, shoot.
Melissa, we've got to get together. I miss you.
I would love that when we get back to socializing.
Yeah, when we get back to socializing.
Gonna be a while, Melissa.
Yeah.
I'll take Zoom in the meantime, anytime.
Don't be so negative, Quintin.
It's pessimistic. It's like
I'm
cautious,
classical, okay? What?
cautious pessimism.
Yeah. So we can probably kick it off now.
Yeah, I think we should kick it off. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Celeste Johnson. I work with the engagement team at Heartland Alliance. I just want to do some housekeeping first. So, I'm asking that everyone please keep their mics muted throughout the presentation, and also feel free to enter any questions into the chat function. There will be a question and answer at the end of this event. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that it is National Volunteer Week inside of April, which is National Volunteer Month. The associate board who is hosting this event, they don't work for Heartland Alliance. All of the work that they do, like this event, all of the work that they do is volunteer work. So thank you to the associate board. We also have an army of amazing volunteers that come in every day. We have group volunteers that come in one time, just knock out major projects. We have donors who give in-kind gifts to us. So we really appreciate our volunteers. Part of my job is connecting people to meaningful experiences within Heartland Alliance. So I'll leave my email address in the chat function. And if you would like to get more engaged, you can contact me. I also want to say a little bit more about Heartland Alliance. So we are a human rights organization, and what that means is we operate within 3 buckets, and those buckets are safety and justice, health and healing, and economic opportunity. We believe that if you have those items, you have the building blocks to have a stable life and to thrive, and also work with the most vulnerable populations. So what we mean by that is, while one organization may be delivering produce to a food desert because people don't have access to fresh food, Heartland Alliance will be doing the same thing. But instead of just delivering fresh produce, we're delivering fresh produce to someone who is low income or homeless living with HIV and AIDS. And that is actually a program that we have here at Heartland Alliance. We also believe in cocktailing our different services. So we understand that if someone's homeless, they probably have other aspects of their life that they need help with. So in the program I just mentioned, a participant can come in and get that fresh produce, but they also have access to financial literacy programs. They have access to housing assistance, job assistance, and they also have a dietitian who can stand there and tell them what is the best recipe for their diet, for their condition, and whatever is going on in their life. So we have a ton of different programs and initiatives across Heartland Alliance, basically any program that you can think of a human rights organization having. And you're going to learn a little bit more about that tonight from our speaker, Quintin. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Nin so that she can talk a little bit more about the associate board.
Thank you, Celeste. And hey, I'm Nin Zudo, and I'm the president of the associate board for Heartland Alliance. I've been with the board for about 5 years now, and you know, we're a group of social justice-minded individuals who are passionate about Heartland Alliance, and we're dynamic and energetic mid-career professionals from throughout the Chicago area who simply want to make a difference. And we promote and raise awareness for Heartland through various events, volunteer activities, and networking opportunities. So, you know, I personally am thankful for the lifelong friends that I have met through this board as a direct result of getting involved. We all share a common purpose in having a commitment to changing society and advocating for human rights. And, you know, it is important to get involved. Anytime you decide to become a part of a nonprofit or do something good for the world, I think there's definitely a lot of reward in that, even just in self-growth. And so introducing Emily and Quintin. Emily is our moderator today, and Quintin is our speaker. And Quintin Williams is a campaign manager for the Research and Policy Division at Heartland Alliance. As a campaign manager, Quintin works to enact policies and societal changes to reduce the impact of permanent punishments on Illinois residents, Chicago's approach to gun violence as well. Quintin works with Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition of Illinois, of which Heartland Alliance is a part of, working with people with records and advocating for the expansion of their opportunities and for broader criminal justice reform in Illinois. He is currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Sociology at Loyola University, Chicago. And Emily Hayes is our moderator today. Emily is an attorney with Ziliak Law. I already said hi to Zach Ziliak from Ziliak Law. Nice for you to join us today. It is so great to have all of you here with us. And Emily is the events chair for the Heartland Alliance Associate Board and moderator for today's panel with Quintin. So I will now hand it off to Emily. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Nin, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Quintin, for offering your time and to discuss this important topic with us. I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot of questions, but I would love for you to get started on your presentation, and if you could please introduce us to the topic of permanent punishments. What are they and what you are working on with permanent punishments?
All right, perfect. I think that's a perfect segue into a few of these slides here, but thank you all just for having me, giving me the opportunity to speak about something that I am so passionate about for a lot of reasons. And that was a beautiful introduction, Nan. Thank you. Who sent you those things? I don't know.
You know, that's kind of, actually, Emily wrote a lot of that, so you can thank her.
Wow, I appreciate that. Well, you know, in addition to working at Heartland for several years, also being an academic at Loyola, I've spent the whole of my academic career studying reentry, crime and punishment, urban sociology, race and ethnicity, and so I bring an academic lens in addition to what can we actually do about this lens from the nonprofit sector and perspective, but I also bring a level of lived experience because I spent probably the better part of my 20s under correctional control, so teens and 20s. And what I mean by correctional control, I was like either inside a jail or a prison or on probation or parole or in a work release center. There's a number of ways you can be under correctional control and under the control of the state. So these things are important to me for a number of reasons, and that being one that's central. So as it relates to permanent punishment, so I want to be clear, permanent punishments is a term that I began to think about because permanent punishments, some of you all may have heard the term collateral consequences. That's probably a more familiar term to folks. But one day I was just thinking, I'm reading about collateral consequences, and I was like, you know, I don't know if that necessarily gets at what these things actually do. So permanent punishments, there's a definition there. There are barriers, so there are additional punishments. So by additional, I mean, I can get sentenced by a judge and my case can be adjudicated and I can be sentenced to X amount of years for X crime. And then I can serve my time for said crime, be released back into society. But then there are all of these additional barriers and punishments that exist that you often don't know about, you know, when you're getting sentenced. So it often becomes a lifetime sentence. You know, I was sentenced the last time to 7 years, right? But I will give an example a couple of slides down of how I am still being punished some 13 odd years later, even working for a great nonprofit like Heartland Alliance, even being a PhD, doctoral candidate, all of the work that I've done tirelessly for no money, anything, none of that matters, right? There is the hanging over my head and other people who are even less fortunate than I am. But anyway, what are permanent punishments? They're barriers to housing, employment, education, licensure, which is a huge one, which is the example that I'll give you all tonight because it's very relevant. Voting in some states and in some contexts here. that continue after a person completes the sentence that was imposed upon them. So you have all of these different sectors that have these barriers. So employment, housing, parental rights. So I just want to give you all an idea of the scope and how far this goes into someone's life, right? Education, public benefits, even when we talk about immigration, and also debt, meaning fines and fees that are the result of a criminal conviction. But I do want to be clear too, this is not all about convictions, because a person can obtain a criminal record that can be used against them in a negative way, even if they were never convicted of a crime. So arrest records are often used to deny people access to resources that contribute to human flourishing. So I'll give you a quick example, and then Emily, you can ask me another question. I'm pretty sure I have slides that will address them. So why permanent? So I just want to give you all an example. So, okay, so let's use me for example. Quintin is in court, right? I am in the court of law, and then the judge bangs the gavel and they give me 7 years, like the example that I gave you. And there I am, I'm like, oh shit, this is terrible. I am going to jail, prison, whatever. I've been convicted, so I feel bad. So now I'm in jail or prison. So, but now I'm out. I'm about to get out. They open the gate for me. I'm smiling. I'm ready to go. I don't ever want to go back into this cell again. I have plans for my life. I actually had been reading while I was inside about different occupations that I can get into. And actually, my grandmother suffered from various respiratory illnesses. So I was like, I think I want to go be a respiratory therapist so I can offer my services. So I read a lot while I was inside. So I'm excited to go to school, right? But 13 years later, right? Here I am, I'm happy. I want to apply for a license to be a respiratory therapist. I want to help people. And think about this in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. We have a shortage of healthcare workers. And I would like to, one of my, I guess a hypothesis is that the reason that we're short on workers is because we're denying so many people the opportunity to be able to access these licenses. So there's a law in the state of Illinois, right, that governs the criteria by which a person can be denied a license to be a respiratory therapist, and they can deny, and it is very broad. It doesn't specify conviction. It doesn't specify anything. It says any conviction, even if you got probation, even if the case was thrown out, even if you didn't get convicted, we can still deny you a respiratory therapist license. And there I am again, back upset and back in the position that I was in prior to leaving, because now my dream, in addition to having my hopes dashed, and also questioning myself about what I can actually do to contribute to society. So permanent punishments, collateral does not get at it, because collateral assumes that there is some sort of unintentional punishments that come, but these laws were written by people. People made decisions. So there is a level of intentionality that comes with the laws that were put in place. So collateral doesn't really get at it. Like, it's like the fallout, but it's not really the fallout. It's just an extension of the prison gates. But instead, the prison is in your own community and in your home and in society. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you have examples of other effects of permanent punishments, not necessarily specifically with you, but with regarding to like access to housing and homelessness issues and job qualifications, and especially I'm also interested in rates of I can't say it correctly.
Recidivism. Yes.
Yeah. Like what is being studied with regards to permanent punishments and rates of recidivism. Blah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a shameless plug. My dissertation is about this. It's about the role of housing instability and reentry outcomes. And one of those outcomes that I look at is if folks get rearrested in recidivism. So the results of that to come. But I think what we do know from the existing literature about recidivism and the things that help curb recidivism, employment is a huge piece of it, right? So here at Heartland Alliance, as Nian pointed out, we are part of the Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition. And we formed in 2013 to try to combat on a policy level some of these barriers. And we mainly focused on employment because employment is an area where there's quite a bit of discrimination and barriers to getting certain kinds of employment. But what we realized, we did a survey a couple of years ago before we decided what our legislative priorities would be. And we realized how much housing was an issue as well. So we have a two-pronged problem. We have, on the one hand, we have a private market and a public market, and there's discrimination in both of them. There is, in public housing, there is federal restrictions, but then beyond those federal restrictions, the public housing authorities in Illinois, for example, there are over 100 public housing authorities, and all of them do wildly different things because they have discretion as to who they can and cannot let in, or who they're willing to let into their properties. So you have some public housing authorities that say you can't come to our properties if you have a drug offense or if it's been less than 10 years, right? And then let me just, in the context of recidivism, kind of tell you how ridiculous a 10-year ban is. Because the research also shows that when you first get out, it is critical to be able to access services immediately. It's critical to have housing immediately. It's critical to have employment immediately. So a 10-year ban is useless, to say it frankly, right? You're asking someone to figure it out for 10 years and then come back to us and we'll try to figure it out for you. So permanent punishment, and this, I know people within our coalition that still have issues finding safe and affordable housing because of their past criminal history. I know one person in particular that, I mean, it's like 20 years removed and they still cannot find safe and affordable housing because it's okay to deny people with criminal records because of the supposed risk that people with criminal records pose to properties, which is also has been proven by the research to not be factually true as well. So I think that answers your question, but I mean, they last quite a while. You still have to answer the question on housing applications, and even more insidious is that they will knowingly take the application fees from individuals, knowing that they have no intention on bringing them into the property and collecting those fees without refunds to those individuals.
Wow. So with your policy and advocacy work at Heartland Alliance, do you work with the state government and all the local housing authorities as well to advocate for these amendments to the housing policies?
Well, so this year, actually, before the COVID and Corona madness, we had spent, so when we did the survey, we realized that housing was an issue. And prior to this, we had primarily focused on employment barriers. We removed the absolute bars to employment. And by absolute, I mean forever, very broad, no time limit whatsoever. in schools and park districts. We also made it so that someone with a forcible felony can reapply to get their healthcare worker license. And we made the healthcare worker registry the website. We also changed things to the website that made it more accessible to people. We passed the most expansive sealing bill in the country that made it so that virtually any offense can petition the court to get sealed. And when your record gets sealed, certain private employers and private entities can't see your record, but it's still seen by other entities, which I can talk about later. So anyway, we mostly focused on employment, but we saw that housing was this issue, and we started putting our heads together and see what we can do. And we realized what I just explained previously, which is that housing authorities have all of this discretion. And oftentimes that discretion means that they're going to deny someone. And we, put together a bill that would limit that discretion, right? And it also create some uniformity across the state in terms of what kind of convictions that they consider, the time limits that they put on individuals for being able to access public housing. It's called our Public Housing Access Bill. And then COVID-19 happened, and they canceled session. But silver lining, because of the decarceration efforts of IDOC and the governor, and also my comrade Carlton Mayers, who is our senior policy person on criminal justice. He and I have been in conversations about the decarceration efforts. And one of the things that's been an issue is housing people. Where do you send people once you put them out? And it's a huge issue. So there is conversation right now, actually, because they have these working groups in Springfield of picking that bill up and possibly putting it through, but putting it through as a part of a response to the lack of housing for COVID-19. So yes, we've done, and perhaps even during COVID may get a bill passed that opens up access to a larger number of folks to access public housing.
Well, congratulations. Never let a crisis go to waste. So with regards to, you keep mentioning a survey. I was wondering, what is this, the survey that was conducted by the RROCI, the Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition, or something that you specifically did for your dissertation?
No.
Okay.
No, it was a collective effort with those organizations, with the Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition. So it's Heartland, Cabrini Green Legal Aid, Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, and Community Renewal Society. So there were individuals from each agency that chipped in various ways. Heartland did play an essential role because in our research and policy division, we have our Social Impact Research Center. So we made sure that the survey was done correctly and done in a way that was going to yield us the results that we could actually move on. So we did that, and then I was part of the data analysis of that. So yeah, we had a huge part in that, but it was a collective effort.
That's awesome. Great. With regards to what you were mentioning, people that when they first get out of prison, it is critical to have housing immediately and employment immediately. And I was wondering, within the prison system, and maybe I am being incredibly naive, but to a certain extent, prisons are supposed to serve a rehabilitative function, and it would seem that they would not be serving that function if they did not educate those that are incarcerated on all of the obstacles, or on at least some of the major obstacles they would face once they left the prison system. Yeah. When you left, or when you put in things that you've learned in your studies, when other people have left prison, has there been any efforts by the prison system to educate people on these issues?
So I'll address the first part of that about the rehabilitative function of corrections. By and large, the way that we do prison or we deal with crime in this country is from what I call a punishment frame, right? So we want to punish our way out of various societal ills, right? So the rehabilitative function is something that is a thread that has a thought that has run through ideas of corrections for a long time. However, the way it actually works, the way it actually functions, the way it actually is felt by people who go through it is a punishment frame. And rehabilitation is on sort of the lower part of the totem pole in terms of priority. So when people leave, and we've talked about this even within the coalition, there is a great deal of information that is not shared. There's a great deal of information that individuals with records don't get, which is why if anybody who spent enough time with me, I always say that there's a knowledge gap. And I think that the knowledge gap is something that I, in my work, tried to, and through the campaign that I'm going to try to, and other entities throughout the state that are doing similar work, try to transfer critical knowledge from places that are hoarding it and not transferring over it to the people. And by the people, I mean, all of us on this call are the people, right? But I mean, people who are left out of how things actually work, right? Because for a long time, there were several myths about criminal records. And, you know, I heard a lot saying, man, if you have a criminal record, you can't get financial aid. That is false. If you have a criminal record in Illinois, you can't vote. That is false, right? So there's a lot of information that I believe IDOC and our other correctional institutions like probation, parole, so on and so forth, they don't function in a way that they're trying to transfer knowledge per se. And I don't want to make it seem like they're just a bunch of evil people. I just think they're doing what the quote job is, and the job is to promote public safety, right? And there is under a very narrow view of what public safety is, because if public safety means separating humans from humans, then we fail, because we've been punishing or trying to punish our way out of crime for a long time, but we have not stopped crime, right? So even if people don't agree with prison abolition or any of the things that, you know, advocates talk about, they do have to be honest and say we have not done a good job at curbing crime or stopping anything through the punishment frame. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of information being shared, and I also don't think rehabilitation is centered in particular. And I don't think they have the capacity to do so.
Okay, to move on slightly. So besides the current public access housing bill, are there any other campaigns that you are working on in Illinois?
Like, you mean like this legislative session? Like we've, and specifically as it relates to housing, we also last year, I forgot to mention, we amended the Human Rights Act last year. Because we had these protections around employment in the Human Rights Act, but now we have those same protections in the Human Rights Act regarding housing. So it made it so that it's a civil rights violation for landlords to deny someone tenancy based off an arrest, juvenile, sealed, or expunged record. So, and the reason why sealed or expunged record gets in there, gets into a very tricky thing with background checks, because the problem with background checks is that they're often inaccurate and they often pull on information that they shouldn't have in the first place. So it's quite likely that a background check company can pull your record, even though your record is sealed, they may end up getting access to some old database, and that record still be used against you. So We are currently just working on the public housing access bill in the context of the COVID environment, but we've also been very, very close to the reentry and decarceration efforts around the state. Myself and Carlton have been part of those conversations. I'm part of a reentry task force that is discussing various options. And the reason why I know so much about what IDOT cannot do is because we've had many conversations with them, and they've been very honest, to their credit, about the things that they're set up to do versus the things that they would like to do. So.
Are there any, sorry, I had one question from the group, was that, oh, okay. So someone, Barbara asked, we seem to be stuck on slide 4, but I don't think we've just moved on.
We are stuck on slide 4. I have not moved on, no. Because I'm answering the question. So
yeah.
give me 1 second. So yes, we're stuck on slide 4. I just want to go back a little bit. So we have this.
Please do.
All of these slides, and then I just want to just the campaign, right? So this is our campaign name. It's the Fully Free campaign, because as I stated earlier, when you are released from prison, right, there's this notion of freedom. I'm free, right? But particularly in the example, but there are other examples of you know, the fact that you can't access certain things. So are you really free? So the campaign seeks to really have people fully free, right, in society as they were intended to be. So again, we seek to remove barriers that prevent our community members, people in our communities, families, friends, and neighbors from being fully free. And we approaching this from a historical context too, because from the antebellum slave period to Jim Crow to what Michelle Alexander terms the new Jim Crow, you know, we are kind of going on that train, because all of these things are linked, which is an entirely different presentation, which I'd love to give one day, connecting them all together, because unfortunately they all do connect and intersect in various ways. So I told you all where permanent punishments were, gave you an example. That's me again. I couldn't get my respiratory therapist license. So now what are we going to do? It's about action. So we, along with several partners, which I'll tell you about, said, hey, we are doing bills every year. We're doing like 1 bill, 2 bills, and we're kind of chipping away. But as I said earlier, through our research, we have uncovered there are well over 1,000 of these barriers in law. So right now we're continuing that research, but then once we complete that research, what we would like to do is then propose legislation based off of that research that would then take big chunks out of the code, the Illinois code, rather than just piecemealing it. Because if we went at that pace, I think we'd all be dead before we got rid of these things, and people would still be suffering. So, and we want to engage policymakers, right? So how are we going to do it? First and foremost, and this is a huge value of mine, and one that we have not strayed from. We're going to partner and support with people with lived experience, right? That is super important. People that have been directly impacted by permanent punishments, directly impacted by the prison industrial complex. We want their voices, not only their voices, we want them to be meaningfully involved in the campaign. So meaningfully can take on a number of meanings, because it can be voice, also compensating people for their time, right? Which is a big problem. Like, people often ask formerly incarcerated people to do things and come out and tell their stories. And it's often traumatic for individuals to tell their stories without proper. So this campaign is seeking to change that, but then also having real decision-making power in how we move forward, because individuals, in relation to the knowledge gap that I was talking about, individuals may not have access to a master's in public policy. They may not have a master's in social work. They may not have a PhD in sociology. However, that lived experience is just as valuable, and we want to create space with this campaign and make sure that they know that that knowledge is just as valuable. And then we also want to advance a multi-year legislative campaign. So it's not going to take, we know that this is going to be a fight, because anytime we step forward, then the opposition comes out, which is great. I like a good fight. I am of the mind that if we are not in a fight, we're probably not doing anything. So when people come out in opposition, I'm like, great, now we're on the right track. So we're going to do a multi-year legislative campaign. It's going to take a few years to get done what we would like to get done. We also have a research component. Our Social Impact Research Center, we're collaborating with them, as well as ICEJA, which is the Illinois Commission. It is a research database that they keep criminal record information. And it's not perfect, but it does give us a lot of information that we can find useful. So, and what we're going to do with that, so all of you may know that Heartland has an annual poverty report. This year, the poverty report will feature the issue of permanent punishments. If you all know, over the past few years, the poverty reports have been thematic. There was a race one, there was one about violence and trauma, and then gender last year. And this year, the central theme will be permanent punishments. And we're going to highlight the impact of permanent punishments on individuals, families, employers, and communities, because this impact, that's what we want to show, that it's waves of impact. It doesn't only impact the individual going through it, it also affects my partner or my aunt or my grandmother, my cousin, and my children. And then,
yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I would assume
no, you
that
can.
also,
Please interrupt.
yeah, it also affects the generation subsequent.
Yes.
As well, limiting their own socioeconomic.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So, what pushback from this policy campaign have you seen, if any at all? Go ahead.
No, that's a great question. I think I was going to say that. So myself and Carlton and people on the team have, in response to COVID-19, have drafted some op-eds and things like that. But so what we've seen, even in the context of COVID, right, which is, it has just exposed what was already there. So with the decarceration efforts, with the governor commuting sentences and allowing certain folks who meet certain criteria to come home, there has been intense backlash, in particular this week and last week. You have individuals in the Illinois legislature who have written letters in opposition to people being released. You have the Fraternal Order of Police saying that they don't want dangerous people in the neighborhoods. In fact, and this is how far it has gone, they have released a list of names of individuals who the governor has released, what they were convicted of, so just violating all sorts of, privacy of the individual. And even one public official in Rockford even stated very clearly that I don't want this person in my community, right? I think it was the state's attorney, or some, not the state's attorney, but like some public official in Rockford. So we are already, and before that, before they even put the list and the letters out, when they were even discussing decarceration, there was this conversation about people, we're going to release people who aren't a danger to society or who aren't. So in those conversations, there's this inherent assumption that you have to make that disclaimer because people with records are automatically deemed risky or automatically deemed scary to society. So we've seen that, in myself and Carlton and our external partners are currently in the process of constructing counter narratives to combat some of those things.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to say really quickly, we're getting some feedback on the line. So if you're not talking, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, so when you were talking about COVID-19 and how COVID has sort of created an opportunity to push legislation forward, but I'm sure it has also, as you previously just mentioned, created more obstacles to reentry. Besides members of like politicians and the Fraternal Order of Police sharing information of people, which I'm shocked. What have you seen in these times with regards to reentry and permanent punishments? I just assume that coronavirus is exacerbating the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So within the coalition, so the way the coalition is structured, we have staff from each organization, we have community organizers, policy folks, but we also have who we call leaders, people that are not staff, but they're directly impacted people from various communities across Chicago. So immediately when the pandemic started to get really out of control, we learned of people losing jobs because the employment of people with records is quite precarious as it is. So now when businesses close, you know, those industries such as the service industry, restaurants, so on and so forth, lots of people lost jobs immediately. Carlton can attest to this. I mean, we were just on a call with folks the other day, and it is really, I mean, folks are really depressed and having a hard time because of job loss, but then also like people just not being able to move around like how they want to, but also though how this is disproportionately impacting folks of color and particularly Black people. So many of our coalition members have family members or friends that are currently suffering from COVID-19 and or have died. And again, I hadn't even gotten into the consequences or the punishments of healthcare access or things like that, which contribute directly to the disproportionate death rate from COVID-19. So that's what we've seen. I mean, we've tried to do our best sort of as the, you know, what we did give some support funds to individuals within the coalition, and they were very grateful for that. But, you know, quite frankly, I mean, it was just, you know, something, right? But that's very telling. If we are the only ones that are really providing support for folks, then that just tells you what kind of world that they already live in. So economically insecure, living in places where social distancing and things are not as cool as it is for other people, like Hulu and watching Netflix and, you know, just hanging out, binge watching shows, like, you know what I mean? Like that's not everybody's experience. So, yeah, I could say, yeah.
So we're going to open the floor for questions. If anyone has a question, you can type it in the group chat function, or if you're not on your computer, you may unmute yourself and ask that question. I fear that a lot of people are going to like talk over each other, but fingers crossed.
Feel free to unmute yourselves for sure. And any comments or questions or thoughts?
Okay, we have a few. So from Nicole Fisher, would like to know more about compounding disparity of healthcare, the incarcerated and the disproportionate number of minorities that are incarcerated.
Yeah, sorry, Quintin, you had kind of touched on that as I was entering it. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? Like there's already incredible disparity for Black and brown folk in Chicago under this crisis, but it's just compounding when you add, you know, those who are incarcerated and, you know, probably suffering from some sort of, you know, from poverty.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the health disparities already existed, right? And the mortality rates. If you even look at the mortality rates of individuals who have been incarcerated, I think that's very telling as well. And not only just the physical health of individuals, but the mental health of individuals, right? Lack of healthcare access, in particular, people who are inside right now in the healthcare system. That is not equipped, period, to just deal with the normal ills of human ailments, but during a pandemic, it's certainly not even close. So I'm with you there. It's just making things worse, worse than it already has been.
And then a question from Corey asks, are there any states that have better rehabilitation systems than Illinois, or that have less barriers to employment, housing, etc.?
Well, I'm sure, like, probably in sheer raw numbers, there's probably states that have less barriers potentially. And I'll be honest, I don't know. But what I do know is that nationally, there are over 48,000 such laws that exist, right? So I think, I'm assuming that there's over 1,000 or a little bit less than that in each state. So, and honestly, when you look at the arc of criminal justice reform in the country, you have a great deal of work being done on the front end with sentencing and sentencing reform. I remember there was a big push around the crack to powder ratio, which is great, all good stuff. Even now, you have prison reform, like conditions on the inside, not being able to shackle pregnant women, so on and so forth. And then you have also bail reform. All of these things are hitting different aspects, but there's been less attention to the back end, what happens when people leave. By and large, that has been left to nonprofit organizations and community organizations and churches and religious organizations to assume that burden without much help from, when we think about it in a policy sense or from a government response. It's mostly been offloaded to community-based organizations. And those organizations don't do anything for the policy because they can't. They're not equipped to do that. I love programs because programs are great, right? We have a lot of great programs at Heartland, but the truth is, and I tell every person in programs, is that we can have the best program ever, but the program ends eventually. And then once the program ends, what world are we sending them out to? So.
I think, really quick, Emily, we might be able to answer one more question since it's a popular question from Chloe, and then we'll take any other questions and send off an email and follow up that way.
Yeah, that sounds great. So guys, several of you have reached out to say or to ask what you as individual citizens can do to help. So Quintin, if you have anything on how we can get involved in the Fully Free campaign,
yes,
let us know.
Absolutely.
So look, I will definitely share information with the group. So
so here's who's involved, right? All these great organizations, right? See that? And then you see that right there, you ? Like you can still in the process of connecting with individuals. So there's a number of ways you can get involved. So we're obviously moving to the virtual world. We're going to be here for a while. No big deal, right? Took a while for us to think about like how we're going to get the work done. And we've come up with some ideas. So we're going to be hosting 3 community conversations with directly impacted people. Now this would be, if you're not directly impacted, you can be invited, but just listen. I think it'll be a good opportunity for you to just listen and hear from people what they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Let's see, we're gonna have a webinar coming up soon on communications and narrative change. about how do we even talk about crime and punishment? How do we talk about accountability? How do we talk about punishment? How do we talk about our solutions to these various problems? We're going to have a political education series, and then we're also going to have a digital art series. And lastly, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So here I am. Lastly, we have coalition meetings bi-monthly, so every other month. We just had one this month in April. The next one will be in June, and anybody is welcome. I will send the invite once we have a date for that. You can do that. So we have a lot of things. So what we decided as a coalition at the last meeting is that we were going to start, because of some of the backlash, we were going to collectively begin to start crafting a counter narrative to the narrative that's being pushed out. And I think that is an effort that any of you can participate in. And there'll be many other actions coming up as well.
All right, great. So, and by coalition, you mean the Restoring Rights?
No, the Fully Free Campaign Coalition.
Oh, the Fully Free, sorry.
Which is a broader
My bad.
Broader group of individuals. We will, so we are currently, I know somebody's going to probably ask, we are currently finalizing dates for all of those activities. And once we do have dates, we will send those out to folks. So then if you're interested, just, participate in that way.
Do you all have a social media presence, like a Facebook page where people can go look for stuff, or do they have to be sent it?
Coming soon.
Okay.
I have a one pager that I can send out, but the name is new. It's brand new.
Yeah.
Press like a couple of days ago. So now that we have a name, there's a bunch of materials and things that are in development, and we will send those out as soon as possible. And we will be creating a Facebook page and things of that nature. So,
all right, great. Thank you.
Individual website too. Yes.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Awesome.
Just to kind of shift things a little bit, and just to answer to some of the people's questions as well, we will be sending all this information your way after the call. So definitely follow-ups we'll pursue after this. Just wanted to raise closing remarks from my end, and then hand it off to Celeste. Just a few events that are coming up, and a couple that I can name for now. Heartland Alliance Giving Day is, bringing people from across the globe, Heartland staff, volunteers, advocates, donors, all participating in a peer-to-peer fundraiser with the Heartland Alliance COVID-19 Relief Fund, which is helping raise the much-needed funds in response to this global pandemic and supporting Heartland's critical work on behalf of its participants who are at the highest risk of contracting and spreading COVID-19. And so this includes the incredibly dedicated and talented staff who are working on the front lines of this unprecedented crisis to safeguard the health and well-being of our community's most vulnerable residents. And so Quintin did touch on the topic of healthcare workers. Please join us in this virtual peer-to-peer fundraiser. We'd love to all connect. We are working collaboratively as a team. So if you'd like to join us, please let us know, reach out. We'll send an email, and let's become courageous champions for human rights. And so another event, which is coming up, is with Jonathan Castillo. Last year, our associate board joined Heartland Alliance and the Columbia College Chicago Photography departments in welcoming Jonathan as the recipient of the 2019 to 2020 Dan Meyer Fellowship in Photographic Arts and Social Issues. So his art celebrates people, cultural behavior, societal issues, and occasional puppets. So check out his work. We'll put that in the email, and and so that is our next speaker in our speaker event series. By the way, congratulations to our first one. This is awesome. We are so glad to see you all, and we're excited for more to come. And so, I think that also I'm going to throw something out there as a way to kind of like appreciate everyone. we didn't have a lot of time to all talk to each other. So we could throw it out there and host, a virtual happy hour and do a little virtual appreciation toast after our social, just to say thank you to all of you and, get together and just kind of like talk, chat, as you normally would in a happy hour. And so those were my updates. And then, the latest and greatest plug on Heartland Alliance is where, Heartland is proud of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot for her support and leadership in finding new ways to serve the city's homeless population during the COVID-19 pandemic. So very proud of our mayor as well. And I will turn it over to Celeste now.
Hi, everyone. I just want to reiterate what Nin said, and thank you so much for being part of our first Heartland Alliance speaker series. As I mentioned before, you can contact me if you would like to get engaged in any kind of way, be connected to programs or volunteer work within Heartland Alliance. Right now, we also do have a homemade mask and PPE drive going on because we do have people who are still at the front lines working, and not only our healthcare workers, but also people in facilities, people who take care of residents 24/7. So keep that in mind if you or anyone else wants to get involved. But feel free to reach out to me, and we'll be following up with you soon. Feel free to stay on the call as well. I believe we're having an impromptu happy hour. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and thank you Quintin as well.
Nice meeting you all. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Quintin.
Really great, Quintin.
Thanks, Nin and Celeste.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hearing.
I'm so sorry to the person who just spoke. I didn't hear you.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to thank everybody for the event. It was so wonderful.
Oh,
I loved hearing and learning.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining.
Is anyone staying on for happy hour?
All right, I'll be here. So, and I think most of the people on are like board members at this point, but this is like not confidential information. I'm now putting together all of the emails that we got from Eventbrite and the ones that Nin sent me, and I will send them to Elise, who I think is still on this call,